Oh, it's a bit of a breezy day here just after the middle of May 2025 in the midst of Brighton Fringe, and the Fringe Review inbox as usual is already filling up with even more press releases from the Edinburgh Fringe than the Fringe that we're in the middle of. And as I receive those press releases, I'm just reflecting on the changing landscape of reviewing at all Fringe festivals, and particularly the large ones like Brighton Fringe and of course Edinburgh Fringe. And as we start to get the press releases coming in asking us to review, and I certainly include Fringe Review in this, I do invite all of you that are doing shows at the Edinburgh Fringe and all of you that are booking shows to go and see at the Edinburgh Fringe to be, in a healthy way, quite wary about the review landscape at the Fringe. Now, I applaud the fact that traditional newspapers in some ways they haven't died off, but there's a lot less of that reviewing. And I set Fringe Review up partly because the power that some reviewers had in those traditional newspapers gave them the emperor's right to put the thumb up or the thumbs down on the success or failure of a show, quite often with reviews that were written entirely by almost regally focused reviewers that saw themselves as royalty and very much often confused just their own subjectivity with the show that they were looking at. And that meant that shows could be destroyed by one person's, not only their opinion, but often their ill-founded opinion and badly written reviews. And the rise of the internet and the rise of the voice of the people, which is everything from anybody now able to set up their own review website or blog, and of course social media being a place to review as well, is that we have given the voice to everybody. But that creates its own dangers as well. And actually what's happening in the review landscape is, whereas a newspaper review that got you 4 or 5 stars might make your show at the Edinburgh Fringe, is equally now the reviews that you're inviting with your press releases, I won't say they'll destroy your Fringe, but they might well harm it, because equally there's not only a lack of governance, the nature of the internet means for good reasons there isn't complete governance, but equally it means that there's a great unpredictability about who is reviewing your show. And I myself was personally furious at going to see work from the point of view of a theatre maker and seeing really good writing, really exciting new experimental work, and already seeing some website-based reviewers absolutely not getting a show and absolutely insulting that show, or writing really destructive stuff and giving 0 stars or 1 stars to shows that absolutely deserved better feedback, better reviewing, better quality reviewing. And so the danger of just inviting anybody in is that anybody can review your show. And quite often that means that it's a little bit like trying to get a medicine reviewed that actually could poison you, because the person reviewing it has got no medical knowledge whatsoever. Now, quite often people are reviewing for different reasons, and that can mean that sometimes they're reviewing to aggrandise themselves, and they're not in what I believe needs to be a humble place of being privileged enough to go and see work and to have a responsibility to write about it, to report on it, and to write in a way that is at least drawing on some form of experience that gives you an ability to understand and get the work that you're looking at. So the risk is that there is a bit of scamminess going on around people setting up review sites simply to get free tickets in, or simply are well intentioned but have absolutely or little idea of what they're actually looking at. And I really don't want that to appear as snobby, and I am not for one moment saying Fringe Review is better than anyone else. What I am saying is we at least make an attempt to do that, and I'm not sure everybody is anymore. And equally that's the case for newspapers, and it's the case for bloggers, but it's just the reminder to you as a theatre maker that the risks are high when you take your show to something like the Edinburgh Fringe. The costs are getting higher all the time, and you need to manage those risks effectively. So what do I mean by that? Do I mean that you are equally arrogant and don't let anybody in? I'm not. This is a public festival, a Fringe festival. reviews are a big part of it. But I do know companies that certainly don't let reviewers in, certainly in the first week until they've bedded their shows in, and in other cases they're really careful about who they do allow in. They research those reviewers, and certainly if you do that research and you find that there is a blogger or there is a journalist who has been dissing shows, who has been being destructive in the way they write about shows because they don't like that genre, they have certain tastes that they're unaware of, and you read those reviews and you realise your show is in a similar category, it's absolutely right that you tell your press office, if you have one, and certainly if you get emails about your shows, in venues that have had certain reviewers in that are not necessarily friendly towards your shows, and you may well get those emails from friends, you might get them from colleagues, you might get them from the press offices, or you might need to do that research yourself, then be really, really picky and be really, really careful and value your work enough to say no to certain reviewers. If it turns out a reviewer doesn't like certain kinds of comedy, if they've got there's quite a lot at the moment who absolutely hate anything to do with the digital world, and anybody that dares mention the word AI, and your show might be exploring AI, then be really careful about who you invite in. If you're doing a clown show and a reviewer says, I can't stand clown, but they're still going round reviewing, and be aware also that some newspapers notice, and websites, that they sell more adverts if they're controversial and give out zero. Oh, it's nice to have glass crashing in the background here. It's symbolic of what I'm talking about. If those reviewers are aware of that you get more readers if you write more controversial reviews, there's almost a quota that could be more or less conscious that the people reviewing your shows are out to get you, or out to write a few 0-star reviews, and you've noticed that, I would put a block on them coming in. And I would say sometimes it's too much of a risk that if a new website's appeared and has absolutely no reviews on it, to be really careful. I would look up their background. I would see if they've got knowledge of what they're looking at. I would read their reviews, and if you don't like their style, the risk of letting them in can be greater than the risk of saying no and maybe not getting a review from anybody for a couple of days. So I'm rambling on a bit here because I think for me this is a bit ranty. I believe everybody that goes to the Edinburgh Fringe and puts time, energy and particularly money into it has to manage the risk of getting ill-written, ill-considered or even damaging reviews, and they have to weigh that risk really carefully. So what does that essentially mean? I think it means you do your research, you read the reviews of people that are wanting to come and see your shows, you have a very clear relationship with your press offices if you're in the venue that has one, to see who's coming in to see your show, and you can get access to that and to have the willingness and the preparedness to value your work enough to say no to certain publications and certain reviewers coming to see your work. And I guess that includes me.